I have to say, I can't think of anybody to speak better on the issue of trust. I personally put my trust, indeed my life, in Lisa's hands yesterday as we went rock climbing for the day. And so thank you, Lisa, so much. Our next speaker is Justin Somaini, who's the Chief Security Officer for SAP. Justin is going to talk about where security needs to be in your application layer.
Good evening, Tel Aviv. All right. Nothing like talking security. That's really exciting. So I've been doing security for about 20 years, well, my entire career. You can tell by the gray hair, but quite honestly, I actually started in security at Price Waterhouse with Lisa. And so when Lisa gets up and she starts talking about handing your cell phone over to somebody to your left or to your right, more importantly, the moral questions of that individual, I personally think that she was talking about me. Because I started my career doing attack and penetration work. Not unlike some of you, where really we're tasked by companies, by our clients, to break into them, to test out their security. And what was really evident back in those days is still evident today. Roughly within 24 hours, anywhere at any time, we were able to be very successful breaking in from the outside, gaining access to the internal networks of our customers, and subsequently gaining access to the more important data. And some of those challenges, or the reasons why insecurity still holds true, is really because there are some fundamental problems with enterprises, technology, and their use. And I wanted to talk about it just a little bit today. When we look at our enterprises, quite honestly, over the past 20 years, a significant amount of threats have come about. We've moved from nuisances of slammer into more progressive and very targeted attacks. We've leveraged from phishing techniques of the past, but really sophisticated human compromises, allowing for command and control to really compromise that workstation so that they're able to access the content and transactions that those companies really hold dear. But when you look at fundamentally within technology, the application still and has always been the first and last line of defense. What we've been able to leverage over the past 20 years is that this application sitting in an enterprise is covered by firewalls, internal solutions, between barriers of how an external individual could potentially gain access to the inside. We've been living with somewhat of a myth in our enterprises, but over the past 7 or 8 years, this has been really exploited quite significantly as more and more very sophisticated individuals are able to compromise internal networks of almost every company around the globe. But what this is really driving is the reality that our firewalls, our enterprises have always been, but are more pronounced, non-existent, or irrelevant today. So what that really does is drive security back to where we've always wanted it, at the application layer. And this is really the most significant thing that not only I would say, but I would ask you. As entrepreneurs, as CISOs, as thought leaders of the security industry, there are probably 3 things that I think in the application layer we truly need to drive security. The first one, we really need to have a level of zero vulnerability. Now, it's easier said than done, but how do I produce software that is zero vulnerability or vulnerability free? We have application security programs, we issue SDKs. There's a lot of significant things that we do, but we have some basic flaws in the technologies that we use that still are not being progressively advanced. How we analyze our source code is very, very problematic. The leveraging tools that are 90, 95% false positive rates, that are very signature or rules-based. We have not matured those technologies to leverage the machine learning algorithms or more of the behavioral analytics of how we identify the open vulnerabilities that exist and how we identify the unknown vulnerabilities in our enterprise. We need to dramatically change that. We also need to implement mechanism of preventative capabilities within our applications to not only are we free from vulnerabilities, but actually how do we prevent those vulnerabilities from being exploited if they do actually occur within the application. That application, whether it's on-prem, in cloud, on a desktop, it's almost irrelevant. The second major thing that I would probably ask is how do we make self-defendable applications? Historically, we've implemented the business logic of security in intrusion detection systems, information protection systems, application firewalls, the list goes on. But there's an inherent problem in those solutions because they're always being tasked to protect the application, and the network is inherently flawed in doing that. So how do we implement the business logic of identifying and possibly responding to attacks, not just brute force attacks, but SQL injection, lateral movement, transactional flaws inside the applications so that they can defend themselves, no matter where it is. And the third one is one of zero knowledge, which is really top of mind for a lot of startups and a lot of companies, more in the realm of how do I store my content and transactions in the cloud to make sure that that content and transactions can't be seen by the cloud provider or the service provider in any sort of outsourcing model. But how do we apply technologies that I can still transact against that data and therefore not needing, and as a result, not needing it to be decrypted from the cloud provider in order to process that transaction? Not just at a transport layer, but as that data is residing within a database at an application provider, how do we implement technologies to ensure that it can't be compromised or reversed to clear text? Now, these three things nobody's really done as far as I know. Nobody's implemented a zero vulnerability system. When you look across industry, the average is one vulnerability for every 10,000 lines of code. If you're really, really good, you might get up to one vulnerability for every 30,000, but implementing a zero vulnerability system is almost unheard of. How do we implement a mechanism that I never need to decrypt that data in order to transact it, not just for privacy reasons, but more importantly for security ones? And then lastly, how do I make sure that my application is self-aware, contextually understanding the transactions that it has and defending against the onslaught of attacks that we see every day? And so these three things are not just the things that we're focused on at SAP, but they're more importantly things that we need to focus on as an industry. We need to stop relying upon really second-tier control models because we haven't provided enough time and resources in the first tier. And so that's my ask to you. Thank you for listening, and enjoy your day.